The glass shattered the room before the words did. I was halfway through lifting my fork when the clink, sharp, intentional, cut the chatter like a blade. The band stopped mid-chord. Laughter froze in open mouths. I looked up just in time to see a man I didn't know very well, one of the groom's colleagues, standing with his champagne raised, eyes too bright, smile too calm. "This bride," he said, voice steady, almost amused, "was not the first choice." The sentence landed heavy, obscene in its elegance. For a second, no one breathed. Then the air rushed back in, loud and messy. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed nervously. The bride's smile stiffened, cracking at the corners like cheap porcelain. And God help me, I felt my pulse slow, because I wasn't supposed to be here, and yet somehow the room had just turned and looked straight at me. An hour earlier, I'd been standing in front of the mirror in my apartment, arguing with myself like a defendant without a lawyer. The dress was blue, too elegant for a wedding where I'd once imagined myself wearing white. I told myself I was going out of politeness, education, closure, adult behavior, all the words people use when they want to disguise curiosity as virtue. The Uber smelled faintly of mint and old leather. São Paulo slid past the window in grey streaks, the sky heavy with that humid promise of rain that never quite arrives. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "You're doing the right thing." I didn't answer. I hadn't seen him in 2 years. 2 years since he packed his books into cardboard boxes and left my apartment smelling like dust and goodbye. 2 years since I learned that love doesn't always end with shouting, sometimes it ends with a polite nod and a locked door. The venue was a restored warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and warm lights pretending to be intimacy. Music floated out into the street, soft jazz mixed with the sound of expensive heels on concrete. I hesitated before going in, my hand resting on the door longer than necessary, like I could still turn back. I didn't. He saw me before I saw him. I know because I felt it. The slight shift in the room, the way attention bends when something unexpected enters. When our eyes met, his expression flickered. Not guilt, not joy, recognition, like finding an old scar and remembering exactly how it happened. He looked good. That was the unfair part. Tailored suit, hair shorter than I remembered, confidence worn like it belonged to him now. The bride stood beside him, luminous in white, her laugh light and practiced. She was beautiful in the way that makes you understand why someone might choose her. I smiled. The polite kind, the educated kind. She hugged me when we were introduced, smelling of jasmine and nerves. "I'm so glad you could come," she said, and I believe she meant it. That made it worse. Dinner unfolded with painful normalcy. Toasts about destiny, jokes about football and spreadsheets, people clinking glasses and congratulating themselves for believing in love. I focused on the food, on the weight of the cutlery in my hand, on the fact that I was doing fine. I was surviving. Then came the clink. The colleague, his name escaped me, something sharp and corporate, stood up without asking permission. He didn't sway, he didn't slur. This wasn't drunken stupidity. This was precision. "I've worked with the groom for 8 years, he began, smiling, "and I've learned something important about him. He always goes after what he wants, even when it's complicated." The groom laughed, a warning in his eyes, too late. "So when he told me he was getting married," the man continued, "I was surprised, because I remembered the first woman he planned his life with." The room turned cold. "That didn't work out," the colleague said lightly. "But life moves on, right? Second choices can still make great stories." Silence exploded. I felt every head pivot, like sunflowers tracking light. I didn't move. I didn't blink. My heartbeat was slow, deliberate, almost curious. Somewhere inside me, a door I'd sealed shut creaked open. The bride's hand tightened around her bouquet. The groom stood up too fast, chair tipping. "That's enough," he said, voice sharp. The colleague raised his glass higher, unbothered. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and in that instant I understood something dangerous. This wasn't about him. This was about me. I excused myself before anyone could speak to me. The bathroom was quiet, mercifully empty. I locked myself into a stall and sat on the closed lid, breathing through the noise in my head. I wasn't shaking. That surprised me. I felt awake. I replayed the words. First woman he planned his life with. He had never said that to me. Not like that. When I returned, the party had resumed its artificial rhythm. Music louder, smiles forced back into place. The bride avoided my eyes. The groom watched me like I was a lit match near gasoline. And the colleague, he was gone. I left early, hugging no one. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent and alive. My phone vibrated as I waited for the car. A message from an unknown number. He never told you the whole truth. If you want it, you should ask me. I stared at the screen as rain finally began to fall, thin and relentless, washing the sidewalk clean. For the first time since the breakup, I wasn't wondering what could have been. I was wondering what had been taken from me. The rain followed me, home like it had something to say. It drummed softly against the Uber's roof, a steady rhythm that gave my thoughts permission to wander where they wanted. The city lights blurred into streaks of yellow and red, and I watched them slide down the window, feeling strangely detached from my own reflection staring back at me. I kept seeing the raised glass, the calm cruelty of that sentence. Second choices can still make great stories. My phone rested in my lap, screen dark now, but the message burned behind my eyes. He never told you the whole truth. I didn't reply. Not yet. There's a difference between curiosity and surrender, and I wasn't ready to cross that line without understanding where it led. When I got home, the apartment greeted me with familiar silence. The same couch, the same bookshelf, the same faint smell of coffee grounds and old paper. It amazed me how little my life had changed on the outside, considering how violently it had collapsed on the inside 2 years ago. I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of water, hands steady, movements precise. I wasn't falling apart. That was the strangest part. I felt organized, like a crime scene after the police have left, and only the truth remains, waiting to be examined. I sat at the kitchen table and finally unlocked my phone. The number had no name attached to it. I typed a single word. Who is this? The reply came almost immediately. Someone who's tired of watching him rewrite history. I closed my eyes. I could have ignored it, blocked the number, gone to bed and let the night swallow the discomfort like it always had before. That would have been the educated thing to do, the polite thing, the thing I'd been doing for 2 years. Instead, I asked the question that had been quietly rotting in me since the wedding. What truth didn't he tell me? There was a pause this time, long enough for me to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Then the typing bubble appeared. Meet me tomorrow. You deserve. More than text messages. A location followed, a cafe near the old office district. Noon. I stared at the address, heart still calm, mind already racing ahead. I knew that cafe. I'd passed it countless times back when my life still overlapped with his. The choice felt intentional, symbolic, or maybe that was just my imagination trying to give meaning to coincidence. I didn't answer, but I didn't delete the conversation either. Sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of champagne glasses shattering, of white dresses stained blue, of doors closing just before I could reach them. When I woke up, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed and deceptively fresh. I dressed simply, black jeans, a neutral blouse, no armor, no invitations, just myself. The The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and old secrets. It was narrow, with scratched wooden tables and a long mirror behind the counter that reflected people in pieces. I arrived 5 minutes early and chose a seat near the window, my back against a wall. Old habits die hard. He arrived exactly at noon. The colleague from the wedding looked different in daylight, less theatrical, more tired. The arrogance was still there, but now it sat on his shoulders like a burden instead of a weapon. He recognized me instantly and approached with the careful confidence of someone who knows they're about to disrupt another person's life. "Thank you for coming," he said, sitting down without asking. "I didn't come for you," I replied. "I came for clarity." A corner of his mouth lifted. "That's fair." We ordered coffee. Black, no sugar. That too felt intentional. He studied me for a moment, as if deciding where to begin. "He told people you broke up because you wanted different things," he said finally. "Different cities, different timelines, different priorities." My fingers tightened around the cup. "That's what he told me." "Yes," he said quietly, "but not why." I waited. "He was offered a partnership," the colleague continued. 2 years ago, conditional offer, fast track, but there was an expectation. My pulse finally betrayed me, quickening just a little. "What kind of expectation?" "Stability," he said. "Image, a wife who fit the brand." The cafe seemed to recede, the sounds dulling around us. I focused on his mouth, on the way he spoke like someone reciting a report. "He loved you," the colleague added, "and I hated him for saying it. But you didn't fit what they wanted him to become." I laughed. It came out sharp, almost brittle. "So he left because I wasn't marketable." "He left," the man corrected gently, "because you wouldn't change." The memory hit me then, a conversation I'd buried, him suggesting I tone things down, be more agreeable, less confrontational. I'd thought it was about compromise, growth. It was about replacement. "And the bride?" I asked. "She fits." "She was introduced," he said, "at a dinner, 6 months after you left. She checked every box." I stared at the coffee's surface, watching my reflection fracture with each small movement. "Why tell me this now?" He exhaled, rubbing his hands together. "Because I watched him stand at that altar and pretend his life started there. And I watched you sit there thinking you were just a chapter he outgrew." His eyes met mine. "You weren't." I absorbed that in silence. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "I already did the damage. This is just restitution." I stood up, placing money on the table. My legs. Him felt steady. My voice did too. "You should have said something sooner." "I know," he said. "I was a coward." I nodded. It was enough. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that something fundamental had shifted. I walked without destination, letting the truth settle where uncertainty had lived for too long. He hadn't left because love failed. He left because love was inconvenient, and suddenly the humiliation of the wedding dissolved into something sharper, cleaner. Resolve. My phone buzzed as I crossed the street. A message from him. "We need to talk." I stopped walking. The light turned green. Cars honked. Life insisted on moving forward. I typed back 3 words. "I already know," and for the first time I meant it. I didn't answer him again. That decision, small, almost invisible, felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. I slipped my phone into my pocket and kept walking, letting the city carry me forward like a current that didn't care what I'd just learned. By the time I got home, the afternoon light had shifted, turning the apartment amber and unforgiving. Dust floated in the air, illuminated like evidence. I noticed things I hadn't before. The empty hook by the door where his keys used to hang, the faint outline on the wall where a picture frame once lived. Proof of absence always arrives late. I sat on the couch and finally let myself remember. Not the breakup, the beginning. We met on a Thursday night that smelled like rain and fried food. He'd borrowed a pen from me and never returned it. I liked that about him, his quiet confidence, the way he spoke about the future as if it was something you could schedule. Back then, I thought that meant security. What it really meant was control. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't flinch. Please, just hear me out. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. There was a time when that sentence would have undone me, when I would have rearranged my spine just to make room for his explanations. That time was over. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for no reason at all and poured myself a glass. The first sip burned, grounding me in my body. I breathed. I thought of the bride's face when the glass was raised, of how no one had protected her from that moment, not even him. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether I owed him a conversation. It was whether I owed her the truth. She found me. 3 days later, as I was leaving a bookstore near my office, my phone vibrated with a notification I hadn't expected. "Hi, this is Anna." I froze. I hope this isn't inappropriate. "I got your number from his old phone. I wanted to ask you something." The city noise dimmed again, like it had learned when to step back. I leaned against the glass storefront, heart steady, mind alert. "You can ask," I typed. The reply came slower than his had. Careful. Considered. "Did you know about the partnership?" I closed my eyes. "No," I wrote. "I didn't." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. He appeared again. "Did you know he was still seeing you when we met?" The question landed clean and sharp. "No," I typed again. "But I think you already know the answer." There was a long pause, long enough for me to imagine her sitting somewhere quiet, dress still hanging in a closet, tags maybe not even removed yet, long enough for me to recognize the sound of another woman's world cracking open. "Can we meet?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." We chose a neutral place, a small park with benches under. Tired trees and the constant sound of traffic reminding you the world wouldn't stop just because yours had. She arrived first. I recognized her instantly, not from the wedding, but from the way she carried herself now. The confidence had softened. The smile was gone. She stood when she saw me. We didn't hug. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I'm sorry," I replied, and I meant it in every direction. We sat, silence stretched, but it wasn't hostile. It was necessary. "He told me you were over," she said finally, "that you'd moved on, that the breakup was mutual." I nodded. "He told me the same about you, that you were just, someone from work." Her laugh was quiet, bitter. "Figures." We compared timelines without cruelty, dates, cities, promises that overlapped like bad handwriting. The more we spoke, the clearer the pattern became. He hadn't chosen either of us fully. He'd curated. "I thought the toast was drunk stupidity," she said, "but now I think it was guilt. Or exposure." I said. She looked at me then, really looked. "Do you still love him?" The question didn't scare me. "No," I said, "but I loved the person I thought he was." She exhaled, relief flickering across her face. "Me too." We sat there as the sun dipped behind buildings, the light turning everything honest and harsh. I realized something then, something powerful. He wasn't the center of this story anymore. We were. That night my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but I did. His voice cracked through the speaker, defensive and soft all at once. "You talked to her?" "Yes," I said. "She's confused," he rushed. "Emotional. This is all getting blown out of proportion." I smiled. "You planned your life like a business deal and you're surprised people are upset?" Silence. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. I know, I replied. You just didn't mind if you did. That landed. I heard it in his breath. What do you want? He asked. The answer came easily. I want you to stop pretending you're the victim of circumstances, I said. And I want you to leave me out of the version of your life you tell people. And Anna? That's between you and her, I said. But if you're smart, you'll tell the truth. For once. He whispered my name like it still had power. It didn't. I ended the call. Later, lying in bed, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Peace, not forgiveness, not closure, something cleaner. Agency. I wasn't the first choice. I wasn't the second either. I was the one who walked away with the truth, and that I realized was the only winning position. I thought the worst part would be over after that call. I was wrong. The truth doesn't explode all at once. It leaks, slowly, through places you forgot were cracked. The following week, my name started surfacing in conversations I wasn't part of. A mutual friend texted asking if I was okay. Another stopped replying altogether. Someone else sent a vague message about how things aren't always what they seem, as if ambiguity were a virtue. He was controlling the narrative again. Not directly, he was too smart for that. Instead, he was planting doubts, suggesting misunderstandings, letting people conclude, on their own, that I was bitter, emotional, unstable. It was elegant, efficient, and familiar. I'd lived inside that machinery once. On Thursday night, Anna called me. I think he's going to try to fix this publicly, she said, her voice low. Professionally, socially. I leaned against my kitchen counter, watching the city flicker through the window. Fix how? He suggested we post something, she said. A photo. A caption about new beginnings and respect for the past. I laughed softly. Of course he did. Silence hung between us. I don't know what to do, she admitted. My parents are asking questions. His firm is watching. There it was, the brand again. You don't owe anyone a performance, I said. Not even yourself. I know, she said, but I'm tired. I closed my eyes. I understood, that kind of tired, the kind that makes bad compromises feel like rest. He wants to meet me tomorrow, she added, to talk things through. Are you going? I asked. Yes, she said, but not alone. I opened my eyes. He asked if you'd be there, she continued carefully. He said it might help with closure. Closure. The word tasted like something reheated and sold as fresh. I didn't answer immediately. My instinct was to refuse, to protect the fragile peace I'd just earned. But another instinct, older, quieter, sharper, rose beneath it. He didn't want closure. He wanted control. I'll come, I said. We met in a private room of a restaurant that thought dim lighting could disguise moral bankruptcy. Polished wood, neutral art, the kind of place where deals were made softly and denied loudly. He stood when we walked in. For a moment I saw it, the version of him I'd loved, the man who knew how to read a room, who could adjust his tone like a musician tuning an instrument. Then I saw what I'd missed before, the calculation. Thank you for coming, he said, eyes flicking between us. I know this isn't easy. Anna sat first. I followed. He waited a beat too long before sitting himself, as if hierarchy still mattered. I want us to be adults about this, he began. There's been a lot of, confusion. No, I said calmly. There's been clarity. You're just late to it. His jaw tightened. I never lied, he said. I just didn't share everything. Anna leaned forward. You shared. What benefited you? That's not fair, he said. I was under pressure, expectations. You both know how these environments work. I watched him carefully, the way he spoke about pressure as if it were weather, unavoidable, impersonal. You built those expectations, I said. Then you hid behind them. He turned to me, softer now. I loved you. You loved how I fit into the version of yourself you hadn't finalized yet, I replied. When I stopped fitting, you revised. Anna inhaled sharply. He looked at her then, eyes pleading. We can still fix this. She didn't respond. I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table. I didn't come here to argue, I said. I came to make something very clear. Both of them looked at me. I will not participate in your damage control, I continued. I won't deny my experience to protect your image, and I won't be silent so you can sleep better. He opened his mouth. And if you continue implying that I was unstable, or bitter, or responsible, and for your choices, I added, I'll correct the record, publicly. The room went still. Anna straightened. Me too. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. Not panic, fear of exposure, of losing the careful scaffolding he'd built around himself. You'd ruin me, he said quietly. I smiled. Not cruelly. Honestly. No, I just stopped protecting you. We left together. Outside, the night air was cool, merciful. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere nearby, unaware that a man's carefully edited life had just developed cracks he couldn't plaster over. Anna stopped walking and turned to me. Thank you, she said, for being steady. You don't need me to be, I replied. You just need to trust what you already know. She nodded, eyes wet but focused. I think I'm going to call off the wedding. I felt something loosen in my chest. Whatever you choose, I said, make sure it's yours. She hugged me then, brief, real. I walked home alone, but lighter. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, and in the quiet before sleep claimed me, one thought surfaced, clear and undeniable. He was about to learn something he'd never planned for, a story he couldn't edit. The fallout didn't happen loudly. That was his first mistake, assuming destruction would announce itself with chaos, with tears, with raised voices and dramatic exits. Instead, it arrived the way truth usually does, quiet, methodical, irreversible. Anna called off the wedding on a Monday morning. No explanation to the press, no public statement dripping with grace, just a message to family, a notification to vendors, and silence where celebration was supposed to live. By Tuesday afternoon, everyone knew. By Wednesday, people had chosen sides, not because of loyalty, but because silence, once broken, has a way of demanding alignment. I noticed it in small ways first. A former colleague liking one of my old photos, the kind buried so deep it required intention. A mutual friend inviting me for coffee just to catch up. Questions disguised as concern. And then the firm moved, not officially, not publicly, but he stopped being mentioned in conversations about promotion. His name slipped lower on email chains. Meetings happened without him. Image is fragile when the foundation is exposed. He texted me twice. I didn't answer. The first time I saw him again wasn't planned. It was raining, hard this time, when I ducked into a bookstore to escape it. The kind of place that smelled like paper and time, where people pretended they weren't killing hours, they didn't know what to do with. He stood in the philosophy section. Of course he did. For a second, neither of us moved. Rain drummed against the windows, loud enough to fill the space between us. He looked thinner, less polished, like someone who'd been sleeping badly and pretending otherwise. I didn't think you'd speak to me, he said. I wasn't planning to, I replied. He nodded, accepting that, or pretending to. They think I manipulated the situation, he said, gesturing vaguely, as if the situation were an object someone else had misplaced. They think I engineered everything. You did, I said. He flinched. I didn't know it would spiral like this. That's because you never considered outcomes that didn't favor you, I replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I lost the partnership. I felt it then. Not satisfaction, not revenge, finality. I'm sorry, I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. But I'm not responsible for cushioning your fall. He studied my face like he was searching for the woman he used to negotiate with. The one who softened edges, explained herself. She wasn't there. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, he said quietly. I met his eyes. Then you should have treated me like it. That was the last thing I said to him. Life doesn't reset after moments like that. It recalibrates. I stopped bracing for messages that never came, stopped replaying conversations in the shower, stopped wondering how I might have been different if I'd known the rules earlier. The rules had always been clear. I just hadn't been playing his game. Anna and I met once more, weeks later. No drama, no strategy, just two women who'd walked out of the same fire in different directions. She looked lighter. So, she said, stirring her coffee, what now? I smiled. Now I live a life that doesn't require footnotes. She laughed, a real laugh. When we parted, I realized something else had shifted. I wasn't carrying the story anymore, it was carrying itself. One evening, months later, I attended another wedding. Different city, different people, no ghosts. As the toasts began, someone clinked a glass. The sound still cut through me, but it no longer hurt. It reminded me of who I'd been in that moment. Silent, still, watching. This time, when the speaker joked about choices and fate, I didn't shrink. I raised my own glass, not in defiance, in acknowledgement, because I finally understood something he never would. Being someone's first choice is meaningless if it cost you yourself, and losing a story where you were edited out, that's not loss, that's release. The last thing I expected was for the ending to arrive quietly. No music swelling, no dramatic confession, no final confrontation staged perfectly under forgiving light. Just a morning like any other. Sunlight filtered through my window, pale and honest, landing on the floor where my shoes were kicked off without ceremony the night before. The city outside was already awake. Buses exhaling at stops, someone arguing softly on a phone, a dog barking with purpose. Life, unbothered by the fact that something inside me had finally settled. I lay there for a while listening. For the first time in years, my thoughts weren't racing ahead to defend me from a version of the past that might still ambush me. There was no mental rehearsal, no alternate dialogue, no imagined corrections. The story had stopped asking to be rewritten. I got up, made coffee, and drank it slowly by the window. No phone in my hand, no urgency, just the bitter warmth grounding me in the present. I realized then that I hadn't checked his social media in months, not out of discipline, out of disinterest. That felt like freedom. The invitation arrived later that day, an email from a small publishing house I barely remembered submitting to. A personal essay I'd written weeks after the wedding, raw, anonymous, unpolished. I hadn't even reread it before sending it out, as if my body needed to release the words before my mind could interfere. We'd like to include your piece in our next anthology. I read the sentence twice. Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. I hadn't written it to be seen. I'd written it to survive, but survival, I was learning, has a strange way of becoming testimony. I replied yes. That evening I walked through the city without destination. The air was warm, the sky bruised purple and gold as the sun dipped behind buildings that had witnessed versions of me I no longer needed to explain. I passed restaurants where couples leaned toward each other, still hopeful, bars where laughter spilled onto the sidewalk, corners where I'd once waited, checking my phone, shrinking myself to fit into someone else's timing. I didn't resent those versions of me. I honored them. They'd done the best they could with the information they had. At a crosswalk, I caught my reflection in a darkened window. I looked different, not happier in a loud way, calmer, like someone who'd stopped arguing with reality and started collaborating with it instead. My phone buzzed. Anna. I moved out today, she wrote. Found a place that feels like mine. I smiled. I'm proud of you, I typed back, and I meant it, not as solidarity forged in damage, but as recognition between two women who'd chosen themselves without asking permission. She replied with a heart. Nothing more was needed. Weeks passed, then months. The anthology was published. People reached out, not to ask what really happened, but to say they'd recognized themselves in the silence, in the subtle erosion of self, in the relief of finally naming it. I learned something then. Truth doesn't need to shout to be heard, it just needs space. On the anniversary of the wedding, the one that never truly happened, I did something deliberate. I deleted the last photos I'd kept, not out of anger, not out of pain, out of respect for the woman I'd become. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window again, watching the city breathe. Somewhere, a glass clinked. Somewhere, a story was beginning that would one day need to end. I raised my glass, not to the past, but to the clarity it had cost me to earn. I wasn't the first choice. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the almost. I was the woman who walked away with her voice intact, her spine straight, her narrative unedited. And if anyone ever raised a glass again to reduce me to a footnote, in their life, they'd find I no longer needed to be in the room for my truth to stand. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with authorship. And this time, I held the pen.